What's up, investors? Welcome to the Semiconductor Show, where we talk about the semiconductor industry as well as the companies that comprise that industry. So today we're going to do something a little bit different, where we're going to just talk about the industry as a whole, and that's mainly because there's a sharp decline in the industry. Some companies losing 5% today, but most overall losing between 2 and 3%. And so we just want to kind of dig into what happened to the industry as a whole today. So let's just dive right into that. And so to start off, it seems like the general consensus here is that it all has to do with the expected pace of rising interest rates. The minutes from the Federal Reserve's March 15th and 16th meeting were out today, and comments indicated that the Fed might be willing to get aggressive in its fight against inflation. So this is referring to everyone's aware that inflation is happening, and everyone is aware of the fact that the inflation is supposed to go up about 0.25 each time they meet, roughly. And so the Fed is considering upping it to a 0.5% inflation at the next meeting. And so it seems like everyone's just they want to kind of get ahead of the curve or ahead of the bunch here and sell out now, as opposed to waiting to that meeting, getting the results, and then seeing how it goes. So we don't know what's going to happen yet, but because of this speculation, people are getting out now as opposed to waiting till later, and they want to decide their own fate here. And so once again, higher rates lower the present value of risk assets like stocks, especially those of fast-growing businesses, and that is exactly why the companies that we're specifically tracking, such as Nvidia and AMD, they fell the furthest compared to someone like Intel, who didn't fall that much at all, because they're more, they're not this growing company. They're more like a blue chip stock. They're just kind of flat. They're consistent. You know what to expect from them. So moving on, another reason why things might be selling off, we've definitely touched on this in other videos, but just want to remind everyone. So some market analysts are beginning to predict a possible slowdown in chip growth in 2023, which is right around the corner here. About 8 or 9 months down the road. We're in 2023, and that's when they're predicting a slowdown is going to happen. And this is perhaps coming from a lower consumer electronics demand after a pandemic boom in household spending. Now this one, just the way this one's written, and I feel like it's been written this way for a while, this just gives me the impression that they're referring to computers. And computers are a big chunk of sales and revenue for these companies, but not as big as they're giving them credit for. And so what I mean by that is, computers for these companies such as AMD and Nvidia, for example, that might be like 10 to 20% of their revenue. They have these other revenue streams that help. It's not all about the computers for them. Yes, it's a chunk, like I said, 10 to 20%, but it's like they have these other revenue generating streams for themselves. So it's not like a do or die here, but of course they'll still see a drop in sales because of this. But there's these other revenue streams that we're going to touch on it a little bit later in the episode, that you'll just understand why I'm still on board with these companies, even with these discussions here. The potential for these companies over the next decade is quite large, and we're going to touch on that also towards the end. So we're kind of doing the gloomy part here first, and then we'll show you kind of why I'm still into them as far as semiconductors. So overall, they're saying it will be a bumpy ride from day to day, month to month, and sometimes even year to year, because as people mentioned, this industry is cyclical, and so I think it's starting to change in that respect, but we'll just kind of keep going here. But the semiconductor industry is riding incredible growth momentum that will last for many years to come, and we'll kind of touch on that once again a little bit later. And so here's this one's new. So there's another disruptor in potentially the supply chain. So There's the broader risk of semiconductor supply chains coming out of Belgium. A 3M factory that produces 80% of the world's semiconductor coolant used when etching the semiconductor chips has been shut down since early March, just last month. And now that shutdown has been extended to indefinite duration. Not sure why it got shut down. I didn't look into it, but that's the fact. It's been shut down and don't know when it's going to come back. I'm not sure if it's like a COVID thing, like in China, or what. That's something we will look into at some point. And so to carry on with that, so 3M has stated it still has enough semiconductor coolant stockpiled to keep its customers' production lines going for another 1 to 3 months. So that's good. After that, though, things could start to get dicey. Anything from slowing down chip production, assuming coolant is a like to have rather than a must have for semiconductor makers, and that instead of cooling chips artificially, they could be allowed to air cool instead, which would be, of course, a slower production pace. And yeah, so we don't know how important that aspect of the semiconductor manufacturing process is. It doesn't seem like it's very important. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of this, and if a shutdown happened in March, why haven't I heard about it in over a week? So that's why I'm saying I don't think this one, I'm not getting my hopes up about this one until I start seeing a little more frequently. But it could lead to something down the road in terms of just slowing production down. This doesn't seem like it's going to stop anything, but it might slow things down a little bit. We'll kind of see. We'll keep our eyes open for anything. This unexpected supply chain glitch appears to hold the potential to extend global semiconductor shortage even further, with the results that could be either good or bad for the semiconductor companies. Yeah, so it could extend the semiconductor shortage. I really don't buy it at this point. It's definitely something, but I don't think it's going to be as dire as that. But it's just something that if someone read it, depending on who they were, they might kind of say, oh, I'm going to get out of it. But me personally, I don't think that one's, I'm not taking this one too seriously. So moving on, along the same lines, I know I've discussed this also in a video like the Russia-Ukraine, how that's affecting the industry. So along the same lines, I just want to remind everyone that this is still going on. They're I don't know what to call it, their interaction with each other. Once again, Ukraine's two leading neon suppliers, which produce about half of the world's supply of the key chip-making ingredient, have halted their operations, threatening to drive up prices and worsen an ongoing semiconductor crunch. This article it's really just a week ago. So, that's still a thing. As far as the interaction between Russia and Ukraine, as long as that's going on, this is still something we need to track. Not much has come of this yet, but once again, the impact from the Ukraine-driven supply shortfalls will not show up until about 7 to 9 months later when the global raw materials inventories run out. So we have a lot of time. Roughly at the end of the year, that's when things could get serious. It all just depends on how long the situation over there happens or how long it lasts. So hopefully not that long, but once again, thinking further out, something to keep in mind. So going on to maybe a little bit of a better piece of information. So Bank of America has this analyst, Vivek Arya, and this guy, he coined a phrase here called mango. And so he took the idea from FANG stocks, which is like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and he created mango. And so I kind of thought this was clever, very just clever in general. So mango, it stands for, we have Marvel, Broadcom, AMD, Analog Devices, NVIDIA, Global Foundries, and ON Semiconductor Corp. Now, of that bunch, Marvel is one that I haven't touched on, but I want to begin to dive into that one. Broadcom's another one that I want to start to get into. AMD we cover. ADI is one that I'm considering. NVIDIA is one we cover slightly. Global Foundries, possibly, and On Semiconductor, I'm definitely interested in that one too. But overall, so he likes these ones for a number of reasons, but he believes that these semi stocks are leveraged to the right end markets with solid demand visibility and consistent execution. And so it doesn't go into it, but what he's referring to as far as those end markets are buzzwords. And those buzzwords are 5G, we have the EV market, AI, and then we have cloud. Those are our four buzzwords, and these companies all have a piece of that industry in some regard. I know AMD is going after the cloud part. NVIDIA is definitely the AI, uh, possibly 5G. Broadcom's more 5G for sure. Marvel, I believe, is 5G. And then On is definitely the EV. And then, of course, AMD and NVIDIA are also going after the electric vehicles too. So just something to keep in mind. And then to elaborate on that, ASML, we've made a video on them. They do the lithography for the semiconductor companies, and that's basically they build these like $1 million machines that they sell to, say, TSM, and those machines etch out the actual semiconductor chips. So ASML's just, they came out with this report, and I thought this was interesting. So at the top you can see all the different sectors, and the sectors are smartphone, which relates to the 5G, so we like that. So that's down in purple here, and you can see in 2020, 2025, and 2030. So from 2020 to 2030, that industry right there is going to double, and so that's going to relate to our Qualcomm, really just Qualcomm, and I'm sure the other industries have a piece of this, but Qualcomm is like the big beneficiator of that one as far as I know today, and that's why I'm starting to get into Qualcomm. Then we have the personal computing. You can see that one, not the biggest growth, which is kind of surprising. I thought it would be a little bit more over the next, maybe it's because it's cyclical, maybe there's going to be high demand and then it'll drop off, but overall they're not predicting much demand in that. Just kind of fast forwarding here, so our next one will be automotive, and so right now it's a $39 billion industry, at least back in 2020, and it's expected to go to 131, so nearly a 3x in a very short period of time. 10 years, I mean, that's not short, but still 3x. And so automotive, that's where we're getting into our Qualcomm's in there too, and that's why I'm starting to get into them. NVIDIA, AMD, they're in there. As far as artificial intelligence, I'm not sure which bucket that would be put into. Maybe it's the servers and data centers. I know this one, the servers and data centers, that's definitely cloud. And so that's the AMD play for sure. And I guess NVIDIA. And so that one, you can see in 2020 they had 76 billion, and it's going to go all the way up to 187. So that's about a 2.5x in about 10 years. And once again, that's just industry wide. So if you can pick the right company in those industries that gobbles up the most market share, you potentially could make a lot more than that. And so for this bucket, that's why we're in AMD and NVIDIA, the automotive. That's why we're looking into Qualcomm, and NVIDIA is also in there. And On Semiconductors, haven't touched on them yet, but they're in there, and that's why we're going to start digging into them. And then, of course, the 5G, the smartphone, that's definitely Qualcomm, among others too. So those are our three industries, and they also have the highest growth. All of them are at least 2xing, if not 3xing, as far as the industry wide. And so I want to do a little bit of a stock analysis. So this is a ETF, and the ETF is SOX. That's SOXX. And so this ETF is basically just semiconductors in general. And so right here, this last bar, that is, once again, each bar is for the week, and this last one is referring to the week so far. And you can see just how big of a drop it had. And this is mainly comprised of the past 2 days. Monday was okay, and then Tuesday and Wednesday really fell off today. So yeah, so that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, just sharing what's going on with the industry. And so I also pulled up AMD, NVIDIA, and Qualcomm here at the top, just so you can see how closely this parallels to some of our favorite stocks here. So once again, you see this big green line on November 5th of 2021, and you see this big red line on January 21st of 2022. And we'll just stick to those two key lines. And so AMD, we'll flash forward to that. Once again, here's November 5th, big green line, and January 21st, big red line. NVIDIA, what do we have here? Big green line, November 5th, and January 21st, big red line. Qualcomm, what do they have? Huge green line, November 5th, 2021, and January 21st, big red line. You know, so clearly this is matching up with those, and so I wanted to even show you a breakout here. So this is the holding. So they hold 35 different companies, and you can see the weights here. I can zoom in a little bit here for us too. So they hold roughly 9% NVIDIA. Second is Broadcom, which we don't cover, but I want to get into them. AMD, we cover them. Intel, we cover them. Qualcomm, we just started working on them. And so that's their top 5 right here. And we cover 4 of the 5, and I'm definitely going to start looking into Broadcom. And then to round out their top 10, Texas Instruments, not really going to go into them. Marvel, I would like to dig into them. Same with ADI, Microchip maybe, and CLAC or KLA Corp. They're on the list, but I don't know if I'll get to them. I feel like there's too many other better investments. But I mean, we can flip through the pages here. I mean, it's literally everyone. Here's ASML, here's TSM, here's Micron, here's ON, Semiconductor, Skyworks. I mean, they talk about, it's basically everybody, but of course the factor is the different weights. And so they're focusing on NVIDIA, Broadcom, AMD, Intel, and I guess Qualcomm. They all have a 5% weight, if not higher. And so if you just want to if you don't want to pick an individual stock, you can just take this and you'll get very similar results. It is kind of heavier in terms of price. It's over $400. I mean, some of the other ones we cover are up that high too. Currently, NVIDIA's at, 240. Qualcomm's at 140. Yeah, so it just depends on how much risk you want to take. My opinion is I want to pick AMD because, you know, this green line here, however much percentage this was for them, you know, going from about 475 to 515, you know, I don't know what that would be in percentages, maybe like 2 or 3%. AMD, their green line going from 120 to 135, that's, you know, like 20% compared to 2%. So it's higher risk, but it's higher reward. And if you can pick the right ones, you can make higher profit, bigger gains. And so that's my process why I'm choosing the individuals as opposed to going with a collective stocks. But overall, you can see, I mean, it does trace the market. I mean, this is pretty much what all the stocks did. They had this big rally throughout the year, and they all kind of now are trickling down. It's just by different percentages, that's all. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. Please like, please subscribe. If you want to have a Webull account because you don't have an investment account, or you want to add a second investment account, open a Webull account. You can use the link below. If you have an account already, the benefits for you are by using that link, you'll get 5 free stocks. So it's basically free money. And yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.